It was a cool and crisp Sunday morning, a perfect day for a treasure hunt. My husband Marty and I were driving out along the North Umpqua River, and we were heading for the Mill Pond Recreation Site. It was only 22 miles outside of Roseburg, but we'd never been there before, and we probably wouldn't have been going there if we didn't have these clues. When we got there, it was easy to spot the Mill Creek sign for the Rock Creek Sawmill Trail. Who knew that there was a thriving sawmill and a community supported here not 60 years ago? We were meant to follow the clues along the historic trail, and about a mile into the trail, we received the message in our clues said to stop, cross the boardwalk bridge, turn and face the bridge. Down below on the right-hand side of the bridge, you'll find a pile of rocks hiding your treasure. So I carefully stepped down along the oxalis and the wildflowers, trying not to trample them, and there I found it. A small bit of plastic, green plastic peeking out. I found it. I found the Rock Creek letterbox. I opened the box, and inside I saw this small carved rubber stamp that looked like a miniature campground. So I took out the stamp pad that I carried with me, just for the occasion, and I inked it up, and I placed the image of that stamp in the logbook that we carried with us. We always recorded all of our logbook finds in our logbook. Kind of like the National Park passport program, if you've heard about that. And then I took out the personal stamp that we carried with us and also inked it up and put our image in the logbook that was inside the letterbox. Then I wrote down the date, our trail name, and I proudly recorded that we were the first finders. This letterbox had been planted last August, and we were the first people to find it. Then I quickly packaged it all back up and tucked it into the box again and put it back under the bridge so it would be safe and sound for the next letterbox finders to find. This is letterboxing. You may have heard of its younger cousin, geocaching, but letterboxing's been around a lot longer and is a lot more interesting. I stumbled upon this hiking with a reward about 17 years ago. I was home recovering from an injury, and I don't know if you're like me, but I was reading everything in sight. I was reading cereal boxes, random magazine articles, and I read this short but life-changing article in a 2000 edition of the Rotarian magazine. The author, Brian Slemming, he wrote about participants called letterboxers who were hiding weatherproof containers containing a logbook and a carved rubber stamp in parks and forests, in cities and towns all around the world. In what was an early form of social media, they were sharing their love of the outdoors with other adventurers through letterboxing. You're probably wondering how this all got started. In 1854, a British park guide named James Perrot tucked his calling card in a glass jar in a pile of rocks in what is now Dartmoor National Park. He invited others who came with him on his 15-mile hike to leave their calling cards as well. Over the years, people began leaving their postcards addressed to themselves so that future hikers would mail them to them from their own hometown. Well, some clever hiker thought, you know, we ought to put a stamp in there that says Dartmoor so that everybody knows that those postcards really came from Dartmoor. Over the years, another clever hiker replaced the glass jar with a metal box and a journal where people can log their finds. And by 1979, there were 100 letterboxes planted all over Dartmoor National Park, and they all contained a logbook and a stamp. And British hikers were writing handwritten clues to their friends, or even mailing them handwritten clues to help them find the letterboxes. They even planted some letterboxes in the pubs, and you were meant to go and ask the bartender for the letterbox. Of course, you had to have a pint or two. So, here in the US, we heard about this in a 1998 article by Chris Ganstrom. He wrote in the Smithsonian Magazine about it, and early adopters on this side of the pond promoted it as a way for youth and adults to learn more about New England's history and wildlife and geology. I love the idea of a treasure hunt, don't you? Don't you? Yeah. We are fascinated with movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark and National Treasure. In order to participate in letterboxing, you have to channel your inner artist, and you have to create a stamp that encourages people to come and find it. The best ones are hand-carved, like this one. So to get started, I had to channel my inner artist, and I created a stamp that we would use to record in all of the letterboxes that we found and tell people a little bit about ourselves. We also had to come up with a trail name. We decided to call ourselves Two Bent Riders because we were riding recumbent bikes at the time. And our stamp was designed so that we would tell others in any letterboxes that we planted a little bit about ourselves. So we told them how we like to ride recumbent bikes. We rode a tandem back then. How we like to cross-country ski, how we like to swim, and we like to cook and fly kites. What would your stamp look like? I told you earlier about our finding the letterbox at the Rock Creek Trail. But when we first got started, we lived in Indiana. And we often hiked on Lake Michigan, and we figured, let's try to see if we can find out where some of those boxes are planted, if there are any there. So we got ourselves a rubber stamp that I told you we carved, and we got an ink pad and a notebook and a compass, and we looked up our first clues on letterboxing.org. Most clues here in North America are placed on that site, as well as on atlasquest.com. When we looked up to see how many letterboxes were planted in the state parks that we visited along Lake Michigan, we were thrilled to find there were dozens. There were dozens. We'd probably hiked or cross-country skied past all of them, and we had no idea the treasures that were hidden in the woods. Maybe those people that we saw hiking with notepads and compasses and were counting their steps, maybe they were onto something. Not all who wander are lost. They may just have been looking for a letterbox. A walk in the woods can hold more treasure than you can imagine. Right here in Oregon, there are 3,667 letterboxes just waiting to be found, and many of them here in our own community. This is an indication of some that are within 20 miles of right where we are. Over the years, 338,490 letterboxes have been planted all around the world that are listed just on atlasquest.com alone. Whenever we travel, we always look up to see if letterboxes are planted where we're visiting, because we always manage to find the most interesting and unusual places that we never would have gone had we not been looking for a letterbox. Now, I feel obligated to give you a few warnings here before we go any further. Letterboxing is contagious, and it can be habit-forming. Letterboxing creates this chemical soup in your brain that makes you feel happy. My husband says his favorite part of letterboxing is seeing the joy on my face when I find our latest letterbox find at the base of a tree, and with this big grin on my face, I hold up the box and I shout, "I found it!" My favorite part is reading the letterbox journals and seeing what everybody else had to say about their trip. We get to see where they're from and what their stamp looks like. And I'm really thrilled when we visit letterboxes that we've planted ourselves. And to be startled so many times by people who say, "I found this by accident. This is a really cool idea. I can't wait to get started." And they're just anxious to get involved. You're probably wondering why people get involved in this. And I wondered the same thing. So when I was a graduate student at Ball State University, I was looking for a group to study for my research on communication and emergent interaction. And I needed a human network to do that. So I chose letterboxers. I surveyed 355 letterboxers from all over North America. And I asked a lot of questions, but one of the things I wanted to know is why they got involved. And while I learned a lot about them and a lot about letterboxing, I didn't get a PhD in letterboxing. I did earn a doctorate of education, and I learned a lot about them. Here's some things I learned. that we are always craving mysteries. One of the participants told me, I love the idea that there are hundreds of little mysteries or puzzles located in interesting places all over the US just waiting to be solved. And we are always craving something to get us to move more, to stay active. And one of my participants told me that her husband jokes that if he knew all along all it took to get me active was hiding rubber stamps in the woods, he would have done it a long time ago. And sometimes you find treasure that you don't even know you're looking for. A volunteer for a local park stumbled upon one of our during a letterbox during cleanup day, and he said, I'm glad I opened it up and didn't throw it away. Now I'm hooked on letterboxing. And sometimes we are very drawn towards new and innovative ideas. A young mom told me she'd heard about it on a local news program. Others heard about it on an NPR story. And one reported to me that it was just so intriguing, we couldn't not try it. We found it to be one of the coolest things our family's ever done. And like most ideas worth spreading, word of mouth is sometimes the best social media. So one of the participants said, my partner is in graduate school with someone doing research on letterboxing for her dissertation. That was me. Ryan Carpenter is the creator of atlasquest.com, and he describes letterboxing as an international treasure hunt. He says that the best letterboxes, the greatest letterboxes, have clues, and they don't have directions. So here's your clue for the Roseburg, TEDxRoseburg letterbox that I planted yesterday here on the Umpqua Community College campus. Start at the compass, and you're at your best. Then stand in the center and face the northwest. Walk 100 steps, and you'll end up backstage. Exit stage right, and head for educational skills to clinch the deal, to the sounds of the river and the rotary wheel. Look left and look down, and take a quick peek, for there, just below, is the treasure you seek. James Perot could not have imagined the evolution of his original idea. We crave connections with others, but we're not connecting in ways that we used to. Facebook posts have replaced water cooler chats. Text messages have replaced phone calls, even to our mothers. We have a whole generation of young people, many of whom don't know what a postage stamp is for, let alone what to do with a rubber stamp and an ink pad in the woods. Maybe letterboxing can get them and can get you connecting more with others and connecting with nature in simpler ways. People have described letterboxing as hiking with a twist, performance art, and a life-changing experience. So, get a clue, get a stamp, and go letterboxing.